Memories can be a funny thing, and that they can be both deceiving or some of the best times of our lives. And in the case of Lost Judgment's The Kaito Files, it's a great little DLC that shows a look into a man's memories as he forges his way into the future, even if that means digging up some old wounds. Well, today at Tiger Drop Films, I'm going to dive a little bit into the Kaito Files since it's been about a few years since it initially released. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to dive into the memories of Kaito and even how they tie into a mechanic that was repurposed for Infinite Wealth's side content. So be warned for little spoilers for Infinite Wealth. But without further ado, let's get into it. I always admire the Kaito Files for not only allowing us to inhibit this incredible hunk of a man that is voiced by Crispin Freeman in the English dub. What a legend. And giving us a little bit more of Steve Bloom's Higashi. But I just love how the Kaito Files is a way to kind of hunker down and take us back to Kamurocho once again in a new light. Now, if you're in love with yakuza, then you know that Kamurocho is no stranger to us fans. But in the case of the Kaito Files, I really enjoyed and relished how it really let us explore it in a unique way by discovering Kaito's little memory orb things. And you have to use his his primal senses, that being the primal smell, or his primal hearing, or just his primal eye. I love it. Adds a bit of a caveman quality to this guy. Now, these memory points not only serve as a way to look more into Kaito's past, but they also allow you to unlock a plethora of new and really cool moves. And sure, Kaito's bruiser and tank styles may be repurposed from Kiryu's brawler and beast styles, but I do like that they gave them their own flair. And I don't just mean bruiser and tank being, well, orange and purple, but I really just like how they feel, the velocity of the strikes that Kaito dishes out, or the sheer strength that he inhibits when he picks up a heavy object and goes knocking down a group of thugs like they're bowling pins. I just like how these little memory orbs are an incentive to learn more about Kaito himself and how he developed these fighting styles. But not only that, since Kaito is a character that we still don't know a great deal about, aside from his interactions with Yagami and the Matsugane family and the likes of Higashi, I like that the Kaito Files with their memory orbs allow us to explore this character, because if you compare the memory orb component of this game to, say, Kiryu's bucket list and Infinite Wealth, well, if you play as Kiryu, then you're going to go into it as a fan knowing about this guy from his journey from zero all the way up to Infinite Wealth. So you know Kiryu, and by the time you go to a certain location in, say, Kamurocho, for example, and you find these orbs and you get to see a little memento from an event in Kiryu's past with an accompanying image, then, well, we were there, so we know it. We might know a little bit about what Kiryu's inferring about and what's on his mind, because, well, we've been exposed to him for so long. But to go back and compare this to Kaito, we don't have that. We only have, well, the flashbacks in the Kaito Files and our experience with him in the past two Judgment games to go off of. For instance, some of the memory orbs are in places that we do know of, but there's quite a bit in places we haven't. Like there's one memory orb near Theater Square, where he once took Makiko out on a date. But there's also a bunch that we do know of. For instance, in the first game where Kaito gets kidnapped by Hamura in that little dingy apartment complex, you can go up to that metal gate and find an orb, or you can go to Tinder and see Masuda and Mari just hanging out, and you can find a little orb in the back of the bar and acquire a new move from it. Or you can go to the Matsugane office and go through a little bit of a trip down memory lane, since the Matsugane family, well, got disbanded in the first Judgment game. So with all these examples in mind, I like that it gives a new perspective into Kamurocho in the eyes of another character, because at this time in the franchise it was Ichiban, Yagami, and now Kaito kind of taking on the reins as the main characters, or at least people that see these old grimy streets of Kamurocho in a new way. I do like that Kaito's able to go to the Charles Arcade, and it's just kind of nice because that's a little comfy place in the eyes of these Judgment characters. If I saw an arcade like that right now, it would definitely have a memory orb in it for me, let me tell you that. I remember last summer I went to this old arcade on vacation and they had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 right there, and I finally got to play it for the first time in years. So thank God for that new collection coming out, huh? But anyway, back to Kaito. I also recently noticed how this memory mechanic is an expansion in of itself from Yakuza 6 The Song of Life's little ghost photo minigame quest, where, Kiryu goes around and can take a picture in a certain spot that pertains to dead characters from the series, like the Dojima office, Shangri-La, or the Millennium Tower. And speaking of ghosts, I also noticed on this most recent playthrough that the Kaito Files brought back the idea of someone in the campaign seeing a legit ghost in the form of Kenmochi, seeing the ghosts of the burned victims that were related to Makiko. And as we saw in the first Judgment, we're in the final battle, that after Yagami gets hit by the explosion and he goes down the elevator, he sees a ghost of Emi Terasawa, where she pleads and encourages him to keep fighting and take on the mole. So I really feel like this is a little trait that makes the Judgment series stand out and really hammer in emotional points in the story. Because as we saw in the first Judgment, that was a point where Yagami had to lick his wounds, get back up, and continue the fight for justice for the victims of the past that didn't get justice themselves. And in the Kaito Files, we get to see Kenmochi being a conflicted character who, sure, it may be a bit of a low-level Yakuza after the Tojo clan disbanded, but as we can see, he may be a big brute that likes to pick up lamppost, but he has a bit of a guilt-ridden conscience. That does pay off actually in the finale, where he is able to strangle the true mastermind of this DLC's plot, that being Sadamoto, that sick freak with the poison knife. Great boss fight, but his death was really unique because the apparent second in command, that being Kenmochi, strangling this guy where they both die in the same struggle as Kenmochi was poisoned. It was really just an intense visual that definitely makes this game's antagonists stand out. And speaking of antagonists, I do like how the final battle of this game, because it turns out Sadamoto was the actual penultimate boss. And the real final boss is Shirakawa, where it turns out that the final fight is a bit of a double custody battle over preserving Kaito's newfound fatherhood and bond for June, while also trying to fight back and win back Makiko after losing her all these years ago because he couldn't let the Yakuza go. So it's a bit of a peaceful duel, but you can tell both men are giving it their all. And I like that for a DLC that managed to balance having Sadamoto be a true Judgment-style boss, and then it had the true final boss being a way more on the nose homage to Yakuza by having them rip off their shirts. I just think that really made this DLC a true treat. But the even bigger treat was seeing Kaito overcome his past memories, his own failings of Makiko, and rising up to be a great father figure to June, and becoming the man that he always needed to be, and for those he loves. It's a really charming little story that manages to be a fresh spin on classic Yakuza tropes from Yakuza 1 and a bit of Yakuza 4, since we had a bit of a femme fatale going around killing people, well, so to speak. But regardless of all this in mind, and while the game really was a true remix of Yakuza 1's classic story in a way, even going down to having to fight the biological father of your new kid-in-law, I do think that the final interaction between Kaito and Makiko was really just a great way to showcase their relationship. Like, she's the kind of chick that puts up with all Kaito's just goofiness and his own little failings, or I don't want to say failings, but just, he's a detective quite literally living paycheck to paycheck. And their final interaction really encapsulates that they're both going to stick around for each other after all that they've been through. So this core emotional moment, and the one with Kaito and June on the rooftop of the hospital, I think just shows that Kaito, even if he doesn't have Yagami by his side, is still a heroic guy. He always has been, as we saw in those flashbacks. I think that the Kaito Files as a whole does an amazing job showing that we're always going to be surrounded by our memories, whether it's going down, Kamurocho and these games, or in real life, walking around a college town, or your hometown, or some kind of downtown, where you have these pre-established memories. Some memories that may be good, some may be sad, and they might be in between in a melancholy sense. But even if being surrounded by all these memories, you can always still forge ahead to find a new future for yourself, perhaps embracing all these memories, and making something new out of them, while at the same time, truly making something out of the present. It's truly something that the Yakuza series has helped give me perspective on. All of these amazing protagonists from throughout the series have walked through the very same Kamurocho, and now it looks like Yokohama is becoming the new Kamurocho. But the fact that all these amazing characters have walked through these same alleyways, crossed by the same businesses and sat in them and had these amazing memories in them, it shows that in cities there's no telling how many stories a single setting has seen and experienced, and what they've captured and continue to tell onwards. I mean, just think about all the things that the Millennium Tower and the Kemuro Hills Tower have seen themselves. I just like that about this series. You really get attached to these settings, and each new character allows you to see them in some kind of different way, even if it's really subtle. And for the Kaito Files as a whole, it's a kind of DLC remix that is kind of hard to come by in this day and age. But it truly hits well, and it hits as hard as Kaito's punches. The only memory I wish this game gave me was New Game Plus. I've been Tiger Drop Films. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to check out my other videos. Until then, I'll see you next time.